Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbar, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Sergeant Michael Thomas. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by students on behalf of the following schools: Bondi Public School, New South Wales, St Joan of Arc School, Victoria. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Girls and boys, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front throughout the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Charles Winnell. Popularly known as Charlie, Charles Winnell was born in 1893 to William and Anne Winnell of Wangaratta, Victoria. He was born into a large family and grew up in nearby Greta. As a young man, he became a well-known boxer around Wangaratta and won several boxing competitions. On the outbreak of war, he was working as a labourer. Winnell tried to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force as many as 6 times before he was finally accepted in February 1916. He left Melbourne on board the troop ship Ayrshire 5 months later, arriving in Plymouth, England in September 1916. Private Winnell underwent further training in England before joining his battalion on the Western Front on Boxing Day 1916. The 22nd Battalion spent the harsh winter of 1916 and 1917 rotating in and out of the front line. Although it was a quiet period of the war, Private Winnell wrote home that he had had several near misses and that his steel helmet had saved his life on one occasion. In the spring of 1917, the German army on the Somme began to withdraw to a strong, pre-prepared defensive line known to the Allies as the Hindenburg Line. Private Winnell misunderstood this planned withdrawal and wrote letters home triumphantly declaring that the Australians had driven the Germans back 30 miles in 6 weeks. He wrote, "The Australians were preparing for the biggest bombardment yet known in France and were looking forward to pushing him back 3 miles in the next attack, which promised to be a terrible one." Winnell was correct in that the next attack he would be involved in would be terrible. On the 3rd of May 1917, the 22nd Battalion attacked the Hindenburg Line near the French village of Bullecourt. They came under heavy German shell fire from the earliest moments of the operation, and as the attack went ahead, they were held up by extremely heavy machine gun fire. Parts of the battalion were able to achieve their objectives and began establishing posts, but in the face of continued casualties, they were forced to withdraw at about 4:30 p.m. On the 3rd of May 1917, the 22nd Battalion suffered nearly 450 casualties. One of those killed was Private Charles Winnell. Little is known of the manner of his death, and his body was never recovered. He was 23 years old. Winnell's sister Martha put a memorial notice in the newspaper the year after Charlie's death. It read, "Your cheery sunny countenance will not from memory fade, nor yet will we forget the noble sacrifice you made. And when our hearts are sore for you, we seem to hear you say, 'Break not your hearts, dear loved one, we will meet again some day.'" She ended her notice with the simple words, "Our dear Charlie, sadly missed." Charles Winnell's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died during the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Charles Winnell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, this is it. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.